In tonight's stories, 3 men meet things they can never outrun. A trucker on the salt flats discovers something keeping pace with his rig through the night. In a lonely saloon, a barkeep pours 1 drink too many and whispers a husband toward murder. And on a battlefield in Africa, a young soldier learns that death is not the end of war. 3 tales of speed, sin, and the shadows that never stop following you. Welcome to Nightmare Proof, where true horror comes alive. Here, you'll hear real stories of the strange, the disturbing, and the unexplainable. Turn down the lights, get comfortable, and prepare to face the darkness. Story 1. I'm a long-haul trucker. An old-timer on the CB radio gave me 3 rules for dealing with the thing that runs alongside my truck at night. I drive a truck for a living. I'm not one of those guys with a tricked-out rig and a proud handle. I'm just a guy with a CDL and a mountain of debt, hauling cheap furniture from one soulless warehouse to another. My life is a series of lonely highways, greasy diner coffee, and the constant, hypnotic drone of a diesel engine. I've seen every corner of this country through the bug-spattered glass of my windshield. I thought I'd seen it all. I was wrong. This happened last night, on that notoriously desolate stretch of I-80 that cuts through the salt flats of the state. It's a place that feels like the surface of the moon, flat, white, and empty for 100 miles in every direction. It's 3 a.m. The road is a straight, black ribbon, unwinding into a void, the only light coming from my own high beams and a brilliant, star-dusted sky. I'd been driving for 10 hours straight, pushing to make a deadline in Salt Lake City. My eyes were burning. My brain was a fuzzy, caffeine-addled mess. That's when I saw the flicker of movement. It was in the scrub desert to my right, at the very edge of my headlight's reach. My first thought was a coyote, or maybe a deer that had wandered too, far from anything green. I kept my eyes on the road, but I was aware of it now. Then I saw it again. It was a tall, loping shape, moving with a terrifying, unnatural grace. It was keeping pace with my rig. I was doing a steady 65 miles per hour. My blood ran cold. I took my foot off the accelerator, the truck slowing to 60. The shape in the darkness slowed with me, its long, spindly legs pumping with an effortless, fluid motion. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. I pushed the accelerator down, the engine groaning as the truck climbed back to 70. It sped up, too, staying perfectly parallel to my cab, a silent, dark greyhound in the night. I couldn't make out any details, just its silhouette. It was vaguely humanoid, but too tall, too thin. Its arms were too long, its stride impossibly wide. It ran with a smooth, gliding motion, its feet seeming to barely touch the ground. This went on for 5 miles, an eternity. Just the roar of my engine and the silent, impossible runner in the dark. My logical mind was scrambling for an explanation. An optical illusion? A strange reflection in my side window? But it was too consistent, too real. My hand, slick with a cold sweat, reached for the CB radio. It was an old habit, a holdover from a time before cell phones. Most of the time, the channels were just a hissing, static-filled void. But out here, in the dead of night, sometimes you could find another lonely soul to talk to. I keyed the mic, my voice a shaky, hoarse whisper. Breaker 1 to 9? Anyone got a copy out on I-80, eastbound, about 100 miles west of the lake? The static hissed back at me. I was about to give up when a voice crackled through the speaker. It was an old, weary voice, gravelly from a lifetime of cigarettes and truck stop coffee. You got a copy, driver. What's your 20? I don't know, I stammered. I think I'm seeing something out here. Something running alongside me. There was a long, heavy pause on the other end of the line. The static hissed and popped. When the old-timer's voice came back, all the weariness was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp urgency. Son, you listen to me, he said, his voice low and serious. You listen to me and you do exactly what I say. You see a tall, fast runner out there in the dark?" "Yeah," I whispered. "Okay, you've got a pacer. We call them pacers. Now, you're gonna follow a few simple rules. You got that?" "Simple, but you don't break them. Not for anything." "What? What are the rules?" "Rule number 1, the voice crackled. "You do not take your eyes off the road to stare at it. You see it in your peripheral vision. You keep it there. You do not give it your full attention. You understand?" "Okay," I said, my eyes glued to the white lines on the asphalt in front of me, even as my brain was screaming at me to look to my right. "Rule number 2. You do not acknowledge it in any way. You don't flash your lights, you don't honk your horn, you don't talk to it. As far as you're concerned, it's not there. It's just a shadow, a trick of the light. You give it nothing." "Got it," I breathed. "And rule number 3, the old-timer said, his voice dropping even lower. "And this is the most important one. Whatever you do, son, you do not stop your vehicle. Not for anything. Not for a flat tire, not for a flashing light, not if the damn engine catches on fire. You keep that truck rolling until the sun comes up. You hear me?" "But what is it?" I pleaded. "What does it want?" There was another long, heavy sigh from the other side of the radio. "Kid, it's an escort. The problem is, you don't want to go where it's taking you. You just keep driving. You keep your eyes on the road, and you drive east. Pray you got enough fuel to make it to dawn." The radio went silent. He was gone. And I was alone again, with the silent runner and his 3 terrible rules. I tried to focus. Eyes on the road. Don't acknowledge it. Don't stop. It sounded simple enough. But the presence of it, a constant, loping shadow in the corner of my vision, was a screaming distraction. I glanced down at my GPS, hoping the familiar, comforting sight of the digital map would ground me. But the screen was wrong. The little icon that represented my truck was no longer on the clean, straight line of I-80. It was on a thin, gray road that wasn't on the map, a road that was veering off into a vast, blank, unlabeled spot on the screen. The GPS was still tracking my speed, my heading, but it was showing me on a road that didn't exist. My heart seized. I looked up, and up ahead, in the distance, I saw them. Faint, flickering lights. The lights of a town. It was impossible. I knew this stretch of road like the back of my hand. There was nothing out here. No towns, no truck stops, no civilization for at least another 50 miles. But the lights were there, a warm, inviting glow in the oppressive darkness. And the pacer, still running alongside my truck, subtly, gracefully lifted one of its long, thin arms and then just gestured. A slow, deliberate point towards an off-ramp that was now materializing out of the darkness ahead. An off-ramp that I knew, with an absolute certainty, was not supposed to be there. The off-ramp led directly towards the ghost town. It was a silent, undeniable command, a polite but firm invitation to a place I did not want to go. Rule number 3, do not stop. But what about turning? The old-timer hadn't said anything about turning. My hands were slick on the steering wheel. The pull to turn, to follow the lights, to follow the pacer's silent instruction, was a physical thing, a magnetic urge. But the old man's terrified voice was a louder sound in my head. "You don't want to go where it's taking you." I kept the wheel straight. I kept my eyes on the road ahead, on the true, real, lonely ribbon of I-80. I ignored the phantom off-ramp. I ignored the silent, pointing arm in my periphery. The moment I passed the off-ramp, the atmosphere in the cab changed. The air grew cold, heavy, and the pacer, it was no longer loping gracefully. The smooth, fluid motion was gone, replaced by a jerky, angry, frantic pumping of its limbs. It was still keeping pace, but it was a movement of rage, of frustrated energy I had disobeyed. Up ahead, I saw flashing lights. My first thought was a police car, a state trooper. A wave of relief washed over me. But as I got closer, I saw it was just a car, pulled over on the shoulder, its hazard lights blinking in a steady, lonely rhythm. The driver's side door was wide open, and standing perfectly still beside the car, silhouetted in the flashing orange light, was another pacer. It wasn't moving. It was just standing there, as still as a statue, its head turned towards my approaching truck. It was waiting. Its partner had failed to guide me off the road, so now it had a roadblock. Rule number 1, don't stare at it. Rule number 3, do not stop. My foot trembled on the accelerator. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to slow down, to swerve, but I could hear the old man's voice. I kept the wheel straight. I focused on the space between the stopped car and the white line, a gap that was barely wide enough for my rig to fit through. As I drew level with the car, I couldn't help but glance. For a split second, my eyes met the pacer's. It had no face, just a smooth, gray, featureless expanse of skin where its eyes and mouth should have been. And as my high beams washed over it, that blank face turned, its head tracking my cab as I passed. A silent, damning accusation. I shot past the stopped car, my truck's side mirror missing its open door by inches. In my rearview mirror, I saw the pacer, still standing there, a silent, faceless sentinel in the flashing lights. And then, it started to move, loping after me, joining its partner in the angry, frantic chase. There were 2 of them now. The next few hours were the purest, most distilled form of terror I have ever known. 2 loping, silent shapes in the darkness, one on either side of my truck. The road in front of me seemed to warp and twist, the white lines writhing like snakes. The ghost town lights appeared and disappeared on the horizon, a siren's call I had to constantly, actively resist. My GPS was useless. The screen a chaotic mess of non-existent roads and impossible topography. I was alone, in the dark, in a place that was no longer following the rules of the world I knew. My only compass was the memory of the old trucker's voice. My only hope was the faint, gray promise of dawn on the eastern horizon. I drove. I kept my eyes on the road. I didn't acknowledge them. I didn't stop. And as the first, tentative rays of sunlight finally, blessedly, began to pierce the darkness, they were gone. They didn't run off. They didn't fade away. They were just not there anymore. The world outside my windshield was once again the familiar, empty, beautiful Utah desert. My GPS chimed, and the screen returned to normal, showing my little truck icon sitting perfectly on the solid, reassuring line of I-80. I drove until I reached town, the real one. I delivered my load. I quit my job. I'm in a cheap motel room now, 1,000 miles from that stretch of road. But I know I'm not safe, because last night, I broke rule number 1. I stared. I let it see me see it. And I have the terrible, unshakable feeling that the next time I'm on a lonely road late at night, a pacer will be there again until it makes me follow it. Story 2. A talk over drinks. Bill Carson steps through the swinging doors of the Montana saloon and clumps up to the bar. He offers Ellis the pistol on his belt, but Ellis holds up a hand in gentle refusal. "No need, Mr. Carson," he says in his clipped and proper English accent. "You're not one of my problem customers. I hardly mind if you're armed." He gestures to the empty room. "Besides, we're a bit light on customers today." Bill sidles onto a bar stool and motions vaguely towards the shelf of liquor behind Ellis. The barkeep sweeps 4 shot glasses smoothly in front of his patron. He pours. "Pour heavy, Ellis," Bill grunts. "Don't suppose you've seen Mrs. Carson, have you?" "No, sir, I'm afraid not." The whiskey wells all the way to the rim of the cups. "Word has it that she's been seen with Finnegan as of late." "Fucking Irish," Bill says. He's already a little drunk, though he hasn't touched the glasses and he hasn't been into his own stash of booze today. He throws back the first shot. A few drops dribble down his chin and through the short stubble that has grown there. He is a rough man, Bill, rank with the smell of cow shit on his boots and old sweat on his shirt. He works the fields as a cattle hand. It is an inglorious and hard job. She may be in need of a correction, Mr. Carson. Not that it's my place to say. The union of a man and his wife is a sacred thing. Bill adjusts himself on the stool. He draws his revolver, a Colt Dragoon, and thumps it onto the oiled wood of the bar. It is still unloaded. Ellis smirks slightly. Don't see as she needs correctin', Ellis. Got to be a better man myself, I suppose. I've been known to chase a little skirt. The second shot goes down. Of course. Ellis is already pouring another shot into one of the empties. Just that, if you don't mind my saying so, you have provided her with a home and an income. It's most improper for her to be seen with Finnegan. Fucking Finnegan. Fucking Irish, Bill slurs. He drinks the fresh shot in a gulp. His hand drifts to the handle of the Dragoon half-consciously. His finger flexes against the trigger. She's always been ungrateful, you know. Wandering eyes. Thoroughly ungrateful, Mr. Carson. Just a little correctin', Billy mumbles. Sun loaded anyway. Just scare him a little. I believe, says Mr. Ellis, that you'll find the chambers quite properly loaded when you need them. And he's right. The revolver is loaded, neatly and correctly. A man could be excused for having murder in his veins, Mr. Carson, especially in the current situation. Carson licks his lips. He glances at Ellis. Ellis nods, smiles, pushes the remaining 2 shots towards Bill. Bill drinks, stands, and walks out of the saloon. His gun wags on his hip as he goes. Story 3. Spear and Shadow. The biting cold of pre-dawn Africa gnawed at Private Thomas Atkins, but it paled in comparison to the icy grip of fear that clenched his heart. January 22nd, 1879. At Isandlwana, the 20-year-old clutched his Martini Henry rifle, its cold metal a brief comfort against the churning dread in his stomach. The officer's arrogance, careless dismissals of the Zulu warriors as mere savages, had churned into a palpable, gnawing horror that rippled through the camp. Towering hills loomed in the distance, their silent, foreboding presence a harbinger of impending doom. Suddenly, the oppressive silence was shattered with a shrill, primal cry that pierced the air like an arrow. It was followed by a resounding battle chant, deep and guttural, vibrating through the ground beneath Thomas's feet. This was the chest and horns of the Zulu Impi, an ominous sound designed to shatter the spirit of any who dared to stand against them. In an instant, the calm exploded into chaos. Frantic screams echoed around him as men scrambled to understand the calamity unfolding. Horses reared and kicked, their whinnies mingling with the shouts of soldiers. Canvas tents were ripped apart like paper, adding to the pandemonium. Heart racing, Thomas fumbled to affix his bayonet, his hands slick with cold sweat and panic. Beside him, Sergeant Miller, a grizzled veteran, cast a grim, knowing look that spoke of a dreadfully inevitable fate. Then, just beyond the chaos, Thomas's gaze fell upon them, an endless torrent of Zulu warriors, a living wave of black, pouring over the ridges like a dark storm. Shields glinted dangerously in the dawn light, and their spears gleamed with lethal promise. They moved with an unnerving precision, their purpose intertwined in a singular, terrifying momentum. The British rifles erupted, their shots ringing out like thunder, tearing through the front ranks with fleeting effectiveness. For a moment, a flicker of hope danced in Thomas's chest, only to be extinguished as the brave warriors closed ranks, their spirit unwavering. The Zulu war cry transformed into an almost tangible force, driving them ever closer to the British lines. Thomas fired his rifle until it clicked empty, the sound a cruel reminder of his impotence. His hands, once steady, now felt paralyzed, refusing to obey the frantic commands of his mind. The tide was too close. The faces of the warriors were now shockingly real, full of determination and fury. Ammunition! More ammunition! The frantic cry surged through the chaos, desperate and futile. The supply wagons lay trapped, bureaucratic blunders sealing the ammunition boxes, a fatal oversight that had turned into a death sentence for countless men. Thomas slammed the empty bolt shut, panic setting in as he watched the line begin to fracture around him. "Bayonets! Stand firm!" Miller's voice cut through the chaos. raw and urgent, but the reality was undeniable. It was far too late. The Zulus were upon them in a heartbeat. The crack of British rifles faded, swallowed by the haunting, visceral sound of assegais finding flesh. What had begun as a battle had unfolded into a merciless slaughter. A warrior, clad in a fearsome leopard skin, charged directly at Thomas, his expression a mask of fury. But Miller intervened, engaging in a violent, desperate struggle. With a swift, brutal exchange, Miller's bayonet found its mark, but not before a Zulu spear sank deeply into his side. "Run, lad!" Miller choked out, his voice strained and urgent as he pushed Thomas away with one final act of defiance. "Get out of here! Tell them!" Without a moment's hesitation, Thomas turned and ran. The camp had devolved into a horrific butchery. Scarlet uniforms lay scattered and stained crimson, rifles abandoned to the chaos of the onslaught. Smoke billowed thickly, mixing with the acrid scent of fresh blood, choking the very air that Thomas gasped for as he scrambled over the debris. The Zulus moved with a relentless and deadly grace, and looking back, he realized in horror that the Union Jack, the symbol of his nation, was gone. He sprinted toward the towering rock of Isandlwana, searching desperately for a route toward the distant Buffalo River. As he plunged into the frigid waters, the cold hit him like a shockwave, stealing his breath. Fighting against the relentless current, he clawed his way onto the far bank, shivering, soaked, and utterly alone. He dared to glance back one last time. The sun had fully risen, casting harsh light on the grotesque scene behind him. He had survived, but the images, the crimson stains, the relentless black tide, and the anguished face of Sergeant Miller were indelibly etched into his mind. A profound, echoing silence descended upon him, a heavy cloak of dread that settled in his chest. The battle may have ended, but Thomas understood, with a chilling certainty that gripped him to the core, that the true horror of Isandlwana had only just begun. Thank you for watching Nightmare Proof. If you enjoyed these stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to keep the nightmares alive. Have a story of your own? Send it in, and you may hear it here next time. Until then, sleep well if you can.